it's really heartening to see initiative like this and sort of getting people like MJ Long and Jamie to speak to sort of communities and communicate what design is all about. And St. Ives, I believe, is at forefront of design and sort of strive to get something really good quality. I myself work for Cornwall Council, and within my role, the idea is to push design and better quality schemes along, sort of get it to forefront. Many a times planning is seen as an obstacle both by developers and by local community to sort of get things realized as they would like, but the whole issue with localism agenda, the whole direction with localism agenda and where things are moving, we hope that it is much more of an enabling factor and helps inform and give a very open platform for everyone to express and participate and make things better. The presentation I'll be making today will touch upon some of the design philosophies Council is trying to include, but it's not sort of final design guidance from Council. It's something which I truly believe in, and I'm sort of hoping will be sort of filtered through in the design guidance and further work of Cornwall Council as it progresses further. To begin with, this is a slide of a very central place in Birmingham, and it's very hard to see in the slide itself from the photograph, but the building right at the corner is being refurbished, and there is this sort of a canvas is put over there with exact elevation of the building. And this was one of the first building which took that approach, because it was felt the contribution made by this building to this space was very, very important, and just having something which will just obscure the building and have no connection to what is there will be a big sort of failure for any sort of project which is going to take months probably to refurbish. So this was one of the steps which shows the power of buildings and images which communicate to people and sort of help to frame spaces which we enjoy and sort of we sort of look forward and recognize. What I'll be covering very quickly in this presentation will be the key three topics. First one is the perception we have about good design, what makes good design. Secondly, introducing a toolkit called Building for Life. Some of you might be aware of that. There is a new sort of version of Building for Life, a shorter version. I'll touch upon that. And third is sort of openly speaking about St. Ives as a place and sort of some views on St. Ives and what may be future options for St. Ives to grow into. When we look at some of the classic design, so starting with product design, it's very easy to recognize some of the iconic designs, something which brings the functionality and form together in a very elegant manner, sort of expresses itself very clearly. Some people don't like it, people may like it or not. It's subjective, that taste, whether it's sort of how beautiful people consider it to be, but nobody can deny it's sort of the elegance with it, which the form and functions are brought together. And these are some of the classic examples where it has been done in various products. And sort of what goes on while somebody is designing this kind of products or any scheme is very deep thought, very deep consideration about various aspects. They are looking to explore various aspects of design and trying to unlock problems or try to find creative ways of expressing something. So it's a very deep thought process which informs the overall design. and that's very, very important. I'll just ask for your participation very quickly in terms of gauging what the design perception commonly are. I will show you some images of some car, and these are sort of vary in their style and design. And given a chance to have this car for free, provided you have to maintain it for a year, run it, take care of it in every way possible, which one any one of you would choose? So I'll quickly run through some of the options we have got. There is this first one. There are different reasons people will choose different cars, and it's sort of the kind of thought process we go through is looking at all these different aspects. One of the key things was not paying for the car. That I didn't include in the option, but it was running cost. But there are personal taste, what kind of image it reflects, what's the practicality, emissions. Some people think about resale value, whether somebody will buy it off them. So there are all these considerations and many more which inform people's choices about a simple car. And if you look at the product, it's not much different. Means product is bit in ether. It sort of can be designed without any context, and it's sort of presented for us as a choice. But there is a lot of thought process in terms of context. Their thought process is the market research, the kind of market segment they are trying to tackle, and they do a lot of research and go to great length to get the right design, right configuration, right image, which will convince the buyer that it is the right thing for them. So when we come to houses, they are as well, in a way, they are products. A product we love much more, we are much more attached to. It's much more contextual, but they are essentially have that image, and there are personal taste which reflects in the house, in the kind of places we like to live. So there is one example of a house. This one was in Poole, Dorset. I think this was. I'm not sure whether the story is true or not, but this was constructed underground to skirt around planning, to prevent to avoid taking a planning permission. I don't know how true the story is, but this was one of the house built around 30 years ago. It's totally subterranean, and there is a courtyard which supplies light to all the houses and the rooms inside. This is classic cottage we might see in Cornwall. And I was struggling to name this. I've just named it New House. I think that's very safe without being judgmental. Either way, it's a new house. So if we look at this one and take us for any house, any volunteers? But yeah, it sort of reflects the kind of cars which might go with these different houses, and sort of reflects the kind of flavor it demonstrates. And I will sort of touch upon a couple of things from planning side, like when council is trying to set up the planning rules, it's really tricky for council to, where does it draw the line? Because from council perspective, everything has to be just on a very even platform. And as a result, things which take the minimum standards or are able to overcome that are these kind of the new house kind of design, which are sort of bit of anywhere or something very, very basic. The council, we are trying hard to look for ways where we can sort of excite people to get something bit more of a character, bit more unique, and it sort of lifts people's spirit up. But it's a challenge how to realize that. I think the role of the owners or the developers who do that kind of work is much stronger in some ways, and in some places where the landowner is pretty strong, or developers are very strong about what they want out of it, they make sure it sort of comes along, and council is very keen to help that process all along. The challenge is how, by setting up the planning guidance and policies, we can sort of really push the quality up, and that's a big challenge. So that's what we are trying to work out, and hopefully there will be a couple of things we are trying which will up the quality a little bit, but it may not sort of deliver the exceptional houses you see or exceptional quality all along. It's sort of much more developer driven as well. Now coming to design, means it sort of, I think it really helps to have this image without knowing the context. It sort of makes one think, and I also would conclude the same thing. It is a very formal place. It's somewhere you just go out for lunch. It might be sort of an employment center or something where people go out for a specific task, and then it's not a space to relax, and it's not a space to just pass through. It is a space to be in and sort of go in and out. It has a very fixed function and very, very formal. I think it tells us a lot without knowing, simply by the way it's laid out, simply by the way it's designed, and that somewhere refers to the purpose of the space. So context and everything can be guessed by the space itself, and it's a good challenge to sort of try to find out what that space is trying to do, because it makes you think what the context might be, whether it will be appropriate. If you imagine this space in St. Ives, I can't think of anywhere it will work. What I'm trying to say is, by the way that grass is separated from the normal area you're supposed to move, which is sort of paved and well presented, it sort of makes one feel, don't step on the grass. It's sort of something pristine and appreciated from far. I'm just communicating my feelings about the space, and it sort of gives those subtle messages, indirect messages. It's the kind of messages you see while walking around in the town, and you feel like, oh, I don't want to be going there, or this is where the town center ends. And there is nothing formally sort of a signpost saying that it's not worth going any further. It's something we just pick up. We just we don't feel comfortable. And I think throughout the design process, these subtle decisions have to be made, which gives a judgment what we are trying to communicate about space. How would we like people to perceive that and use that? And it requires a lot of hard deliberation and iterative thinking to sort of go through this entire process. And like touching upon the point in terms of places and how they appear, there will be difference in opinion. Some people will think that it is rather nice and everything is well presented, and some people will think it is not that great, and that's a fact. So this aesthetics and all is much more personal taste, and there is that personal preference and experiences which come into play in that. Keeping all that in mind, how do we try to get something which sort of works for everyone and sort of set some universal principle? It's a big challenge. One of the key things is, which helps to sort of set that principle, is to know where and why. Where that place is and why. Precisely the kind of context issues we talked about. And I mentioned earlier this Building for Life guidance, which was published by CABE when CABE was existing. Since it has been absorbed in Design Council, they have rejigged this Building for Life into new shorter version, Building for Life 12, which I feel is a very good guidance in terms of setting that broad principles. It asks 12 straightforward questions, and it can be applied at various scales, and depending on how that answers come up, you can judge how successful a particular scheme is. I would advise not to use this guidance as a toolkit to sort of like a tick box or a scoring toolkit. It sort of can be really tricky to use that way, but it's much more about it is much more of a prompt to help you ask the right question and see if enough justification can be presented for that. Don't know whether you can see it clearly or not. These are sort of 12 questions from Building for Life. I'll just quickly go through that. It sort of divides into 3 key categories. First category is how well the development integrates into the neighborhood, existing fabric or community. It talks about connections, facilities, public transport, meeting local needs. And these can be applied at a large scale in terms of what is the future growth demand and large extension, but at a single house level as well. If you want to develop 1 house or 10 houses in a small community, it might help you to identify the right place for it to go. Second set of questions which looks at creating a space and looks at the character, how the design addresses its context, how well the streets and spaces relate to each other, and how easy it is to find way around that place. I think it sort of talks a lot more about urban design and setting issues for a particular place, and it's sort of very good in terms of understanding space, something St. Ives is amazingly successful in doing. Especially the older part of town is really sort of well laid out and sort of caters for it well. And the third part talks about some of the practical issues around car parking, making sure everybody is equally catered in design of street, and it's not just for cars, it sort of considers pedestrian, sort of people with mobility difficulties and all. And when it comes to private space, it talks about whether there is enough space for private dwelling holders. There has been shrinking of the development sort of housing size as we go along, and nowadays the plans are really constrained. So it asks those questions. What we are trying to do is use this same guidance, Building for Life, and adapt it for Cornwall Council's design guide. So hopefully that it is primarily based on this Building for Life, and they are quite open-ended questions which help to explore and probe issues. Couple of issues which we felt were not reflected adequately in Building for Life and we have included in there is architectural integrity and sustainability. I think those are 2 key issues which we feel lacking, especially in anywhere kind of development which we see. They say about character and all, they pay some lip service to what might be locally distinctive, but when it says, is it an excellent architecture and is it really a sustainable design, I think that's something worth exploring further. The issue I'll sort of deal with in this further discussion is focused around character and context. I think that's one of the key issues, and it's one of the most tricky one to understand from, and that's, I think, something we can sort of emphasize on. So as Building for Life explains it, character, it sort of says what is locally distinctive and how this scheme tries to apply that and sort of use that as part of its proposal. It's a very generic overall view of presenting thing. It gives further guidance, but these are the key 2 points which come across. It sort of recommends to avoid a proposal which can be seen anywhere, don't reflect on the local character or local typology at all, and that's something it stresses. When we talk about character, often we think about this kind of image, like something which is sort of have got tons of character, something which is very strong, has got historic influence, and it has got layers of history and influence sort of embedded in there, and it's something which we cherish. In terms of what we are aspiring to achieve, there are some examples all within Cornwall what has been delivered, and that's what we try to achieve. The top left-hand corner image is a development in Penzance, and there is this Alexandra Road with nice Victorian houses, and this one is a modern take, resembling much too closely with old houses, but done in a fairly good manner. It sort of finished very well, and it's a good scheme. The right side one is one at Truro, and I guess everybody knows the scheme at Penryn. And the bottom right one is one in Hale. Actually, there is a small hidden development with sustainable houses, very near to Lidl actually, and that's the kind of houses which has gone in there. Really good scheme, and I think if I remember it correctly, it was there for a year and a half or 2 years when we visited that, and it didn't need heating to be switched on. There was ground source heat pumps which used to sort of circulate and heat up the house. As a backup, they had a wood burner, but they never used it, so it was performing really well. So this is what we aspire for, and this is where we would like to go in future. But often what we get is this, and there is a huge gap in reality. Maybe the one on the left is fairly successful scheme. It's one from Poundbury in Dorset. It's seen as one of the exemplar projects in terms of what they have achieved in urban design. Architecture is pastiche, but the way they have treated the public realm and road is they were one of the pioneers who managed to move away from highway standards and tarmac all over, and they have been very successful. But in terms of architecture, it is gone for safe pastiche. There are new scheme by Princess Foundation in Newquay, where they are looking to go a bit more modern with architecture and not so prescriptive. Hopefully it will work out better, but they have been increasingly opening up. And on the right you would see this standard stuff from Volume House Builder. I think one of the key things I would point out here in terms of Volume House Builder is they are incredibly hard to deal with. They have got set plans down to every millimeter of space, and when you talk about it doesn't look Cornish, what they will do is they will render it over, they will have a granite sill, and they will tell us this is Cornish. And that's how they sort of work. If we would advise them, or if we try to push them to design bespoke units, they will not do more than 10 or 15% of bespoke units on site. They will stick to their standard houses. It helps them to drive the cost down, and construction cost is, I think they can undercut the market, normal builders by 20% or more by going for that standard types, and they have got their contractual arrangement fixed with all the builders, so they know exactly how many meters of wire will go in certain house, and they can sort of cost it right from the beginning, and that's what really drives it. It's unfortunate truth, but that's how they operate. So it is a hard job, but we are hoping to introduce some initiatives to help, or at least up the quality. We are looking to develop a Cornwall standards guide, which will look at the internal spaces and spaces around the houses, and set the basic minimum standard as well as aspirations where we would like to go. Hopefully that will sort of prevent the squeezing of rooms which has been going on in past. But recently, last week, there has been publication by government saying they are going to review all the standards and regulations relating to buildings and spaces, and with a view to cut red tape. So we don't know where that project will be in 6 to 8 months time when it will be ready for consultation. But that's something we are trying, and there is uncertainty around the central government direction on that. So there are some initiatives which will help. Now coming to the latter part of the presentation, St. Ives. This is the image of St. Ives we take away with us whenever we come here. Sort of real mixture of roofscape, architecture, scale, everything sort of working together. But if you see it closely as an individual building, very few resemble each other. And that's the most charming part of St. Ives. Is there any other image you feel that sort of reflects the built environment of St. Ives, or any other part which is one people would remember?
I mean, what we're talking about, areas like that, were once on the plans to be demolished.
Yeah.
And Borlase Smart, in actual fact, was one of the key people who actually fought against that.
Yeah, means all over there was this proposal to for slum clearance, what they called, and demolish.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
But I mean, if people got their way, that wouldn't exist today.
Yeah, means it was parts of Penzance were demolished, and there was this tower block made in Penzance, and it happened all over. And I think there was, at that time, the drivers were a lot different. It was more towards hygiene and standardization. The philosophy and thinking was totally different. I think the Le Corbusier sort of described like house as a machine for living, and everything was seen as a machine, like working like a clockwork, and everything was based around road. You go to different things like your work, your leisure center, different areas where you would like to socialize, areas where you like to eat, everything you drive, and in between that social and enriching thing was totally neglected. Means, yeah, that was on cards at some point, and we have sort of overcome that, and people have realized the kind of value this social experience, enrichment it offers, and I think it has been cherished and preserved very well. St. Ives is one of the great examples. There are some others villages in Cornwall.
A lot of people in St. Ives feel very upset when developers come in. They're totally unaware of a general context of St. Ives, let alone the specific context of the three areas that we talked about. And that's what can lead to the destruction of a place that we all cherish.
Yeah, definitely. That context is very, very important. And sort of any scheme which sort of does not address its context appropriately cannot be successful in terms of what design it's trying to promote and realize. Another thing is different people will see context in a different manner. It's very tricky to sort of have a similar theme or similarities drawn up. There are some documents which are available, like conservation area appraisals and various historic studies, which help to inform something which underpins the entire context, and they are really helpful. But without the benefit of that document, it becomes very tricky to sort of have that common understanding. If you meet 10 people and discuss things, there might be a couple of points which everybody realizes are sort of fair enough, but there are people who will have different take on it. They will get different vibes out of a place, and they will have different view on that. So that's very important. But I think it is paramount to understand that context and have an open debate about that. So at least you can see the amount of effort which has gone in there in order to address that, rather than sort of just ignoring that. Somewhere as important as St. Ives, there will be lots of guidance available and a lot of studies being done. But there are areas, especially out at the fringes, where there are important buildings, but we don't have that kind of guidance and details. And I didn't mean to say it is sort of subjective or parallels can't be drawn, but it is a real challenge to draw something which holds everything together, have that conclusive kind of judgment which most of the people will be happy with. And another challenge is how the design addresses that context, because we had schemes where there will be people calling for similar scale, similar form, similar material, similar colors, and you have the same building as next one. And it's like we don't need that solution as well. There is one building I can distinctly remember I haven't got the image for that, but in Copenhagen there was all these historic terraces. They were untouched during the war, and then in between that there was this narrow plot, same size as any other terrace, and all our historic building, stone, render, brickwork, different ages, but they all work together, nice colorful elevations. And in between there is this glass and steel building, and it's sort of shamelessly modern. It doesn't have any ornamentation, but what the architect did was take the horizontal lines, which were very, very strongly expressed, and vertical lines, and then played with the glass color. Somewhere there was opaque cladding, somewhere it was sort of solid, and it reflected the proportions of adjoining building, and it worked fantastic. In my view, it was one of the most successful building I have ever seen.
Yeah,
and it was not trying to mimic anything except the proportions, and it was very, very successful. So it's sort of, and I think the vast majority of the success of a project lies in the skill of architect and design team. From our end, we can challenge them and push them as hard as we can. And I think from design point of view, we would like to enable to open up the platform where that discussion can take place. We cannot sort of prescribe what might be the right design over there. It depends on the client, it depends on local community, depends on the architect. But we can help to open up that platform so people can openly debate and sort of realize how much effort has been given. So I think that's something we are very keen to do. And if the design guide sort of moves in the direction we are intending to, it will have that overall guidance and give that overall platform based on building for life, and not try to describe this kind of material will be appropriate in this area. It will just say that this is the context. How are you thinking of addressing that? What is your thought process? Communicate to us very clearly. There is that part of town as well, and it's sort of, from many places, it's hard to take a picture of St. Ives without getting those terraces. And Victorian time, in a way, was one of the most speculative sort of period, and where there was a lot of experimentation. The kind of forms we see over here, at that time, it would have seemed very contextually inappropriate or something not suitable for St. Ives at all. And there are numerous examples all over. If you see some of the historic maps for the town, the kind of destruction of the local fabric caused by Victorian engineering is phenomenal. The railway viaducts, how they sort of broke the city or villages into parts. And one of the simple example is in Camborne. There's sort of Pen Ponds right next to it, a tiny little village, and this railway sort of embankment goes right through it, and it's sort of, one can only imagine what kind of reaction would have been there when that thing was put through. But there was this time, and now we seem to feel like that's a really elegant or something charming rather. And there is that historic perspective on what has gone in there. At that time, the point of view might be different. But I would like to tease one thing out, is what makes these structures, sort of these buildings, stand the test of time? What do you think makes it successful? What are the key features you might try to pick up in a modern development to test whether it will be something we will really cherish in future?
Regards to the Portminster there, which is a commanding building, it always has been. I think the reason that stood the test of time, that was suitable for yesterday, and it's also suitable for today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's worth taking into consideration when we're looking at applications for planning and design. that they are different today. Things are changing, and not all things in our town are bad. I can assure you of that.
In terms of budget, means means that's one of the key things which is always presented to us in the budget. There are I won't go into that detail, but there are sort of agents and consultants who will start with the budget and then talk about their proposal later on. But there are these issues we are very much aware of. There are a few things in terms of getting a layout right. St. Ives luckily doesn't have so much badly laid out estates or housing development. There are some really dreadful examples all over country, and getting that right doesn't really cost anything. It just needs a bit more thinking, getting the structure right, how the town works. And if you look at the building for life criteria, I think out of 12 questions which we have extended to 14, I think around 10 probably won't affect budget that much. And if there are compromises made, it's sort of long and hard thought in terms of having real detailed discussion about what can be compromised and why, and where there needs to be real effort. Means just sitting on design review panel, there was some of the discussion, and local architects suggested some of the materials which simply don't work in Cornwall because of the climate condition, but any architect from elsewhere will not realize, and as a result, instead of applying render A, they apply render B, and all you get is algae within a year. And budget wide it wouldn't have cost that much, but it's having that knowledge and insight. So there are these things. I do understand we can't have sort of stone clad building and all these things, but we can try to push the quality up all along as well. I think that's one of the key things. There are very few self-build or owner sort of people build their own houses. Right now the housing, I think more than 90% of housing is sort of built by volume house builders or developers, and people sort of buy into that. And that's sort of the picture we have in terms of St. Ives. The main center is really, there are few houses, there are a lot of conversion and flats and extensions, and there will be some developer who will speculatively pay for the building, and there might be bidding process between 2-3 developers, so whoever pays the most gets it, and in order to recover their money they have to build the most, and there is this domino effect which comes into play. And it is right that it has to be tested. We use some very rudimentary toolkit in terms of judging the housing need, and there are some registers, but they are not very sort of we can never be precise in that, because it sort of relies on people coming and registering and deregistering themselves when the need sort of goes away, but it's sort of unlikely to happen. So there is we can't sort of pinpoint the need, but there is that speculation and sort of developers going and buying certain assets and plots or buildings and expecting something way larger than what would be acceptable. It's not uncommon, it happens. Means we are trying, because of all the constraints and lack of manpower, we are trying really hard to get the standards, but try to see where it has been done successfully and we can adapt, rather than trying to do everything from ground up. And there is a really good guide called Lifetime Home Standards, which talks about different need, wheelchair access within the house, and conversion potential and all these things. It's a wonderful guide. What we don't know is what's the reaction in sort of development community to that. And this project about standards we are talking about, we are essentially looking to Lifetime Home Standards, and it's like, how much of that can we make it mandatory in Cornwall? So then if you have houses, it can be adapted depending on the need. It can be disabled friendly, it can have wheelchair access and different components along with that. But I think that there are other problems as well, like if you think about towns like St. Ives and Mousehole and all these places, if you sort of build in that standards, then the character of the area is under threat. Suddenly you will have, if you have an empty plot, a sizable plot, and suddenly you have these standard house which are vastly bigger, not in keeping with the scale and character of the area, it sort of doesn't work as well. So we are aiming to sort of explore that. We have just got that project mandate, and we heard about this central government decision, so we are hoping to get some clarity before moving forward. I think St. Ives is in fortunate position where people are willing to invest. They see the value in here, and I think it is sort of one of the leading, it is the leading place in Cornwall where people would invest in quality. So I think it's right to put that kind of agenda forward. In terms of the local plan, I'm not an expert in there, but as far as I understand, you can choose and pick the issues you will be covering under local plan. So there might be some policies out there which you might agree with, and you might say, okay, that policy is done. We don't want to sort of use our energy to go over the same ground and cover the same issues. We focus our sort of energy on getting these things right. And you can use planning toolkits like neighborhood planning and other things to get that message across, which isn't captured adequately elsewhere. So there can be initiatives, and it's sort of, if you have any ideas, what I would suggest is the way communication has been set up. It goes through your community networks manager. So I can't remember, it might be Maxine Hardy, I think, in this area. So if you relay it through them, and then they will talk to the planners and sort of arrange meetings and discussion. But there will be, means there is that channel available, and I would advise not to cover everything because it becomes too complicated too quickly, and focus on certain areas, so it sort of becomes manageable and something you can sort of really try to focus and deliver. It was a long time ago, I think I read an article in Building Design, and which sort of mentions their analysis showed 6% of the cost, the total expense of the building was initial construction and cost. Rest 94% is spent for upkeep, renovation and everything over a long period of time. And I don't know, it was long ago I read something like that, so I can't remember what kind of examples they looked at, but sort of these buildings require an upkeep, and they require investment. They require people who love and cherish them as something like their own houses, something which is closely related to them, or as businesses which are generating money and sort of getting that, and there is getting the income, so there is an initiative to reinvest back and sort of keep it working. In central London, one of the key bits in central London is the entire land is owned on sort of leased out, and every 50-70 years it reverts back, and it's in interest of the landowner sort of to keep on reinvesting and making it work. So it's one of the key bits like that, but the buildings need to have that value, and I think how it looks and architecture helps immensely in terms of getting that value, and it's a lot to do with personal taste as well. There are people who sort of would like something which is so formal and sort of on it, and there are people who will be much more comfortable with minimalistic sort of approach. So there are these sort of difficulties, but one of the key things is people should value it and try to sort of keep that intact. It's good debate. And there are a few more slides I just needed to talk about. There is this post-war time when there was masses of housing and all, and in some aspects there are unsuccessful parts of St. Ives, but in terms of how it is laid out, it's much better than we see elsewhere. There are proper streets, proper houses addressing the streets, and it follows all the simple urban design principle. There are odd bits and pieces here and there. The corners and all these things are not well addressed. many places where grass and all this public realm doesn't have any ownership or definition. It's sort of just there, bit unusable in some ways, and there are issues, but overall it's not bad as compared to many of the places. And then there is, right now, that one is from Carbis Bay, I think, the bottom one. But then there is St. Ives, there is this housing association scheme next to Tate. There is development further along. And this is sort of St. Ives right now. And as I think it has come up in this room, there are various small schemes. There are some lovely individual houses, which I haven't sort of got over here. But this is something which is very much current. One of the things which sort of starts concerning me is the scale, particularly when it comes to town centre. How big a scale can town centre should have, and where we should say that it's a bit too much and should start looking at breaking up the buildings or having number of smaller development thing. And sort of going to future, what that might be, and that's something you guys sort of can play a big role in terms of trying to help steer that. And quickly looking at some other examples, I won't name the places, but you know where things are. It's just looking at different approaches where different places have employed. 3 or 4 quick slide. One is very market-led, anything goes kind of approach. And there is this competition to go higher and bigger in some ways. There is this volume house builder stuff. The one on the bottom right is done by a volume house builder. It's done as part of the design challenge to construct a house within £60,000. It was 3-4 years ago, so not counting inflation. But that was one of the response which came through from a volume house builder. So they are sort of capable, or they can experiment. It's like they are just too wary. They like to play safe because they know this safe thing sells. This modern interpretation of traditional form, this is one of the ways we can go. Or they can be sustainable elements, something which is very modern and very crisp, and something which is very earthy. And sort of we can have anything along that spectrum sort of presented to us. It's for us to decide. And going back to building for life, some of the tools in terms of addressing the context, in terms of character, what we hope will have enable this open debate and help you to sort of assess how much developer and design sort of consultants have paid attention and how much effort has gone in resolving issues, are these kind of questions. And if probe deep enough, look at their sort of design and access statements and their sort of explanations, it should give great amount of detail in terms of thought which has gone behind that. Yeah.